evening, Jules. We're allowing a few people to join us. We want to thank you for coming in this afternoon. We are very, very excited about our topic today. Um, from surviving to striving. This is Susie's story. So we were very excited today to have her here. We'll give it just maybe about another minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started. So stay with us. For those of you who are joining us from um, the YouTube page, if there's anyone over on that side, we're happy to have you here today as well. If you don't see it today, um, we'd like to thank you for joining us, even in a replay. For our replay viewers from our You Are a Jewel page, as well as our private group, thank you all for joining us today as well. We always like to make sure that we get started right on time. And so it is at this time, 5:31. And so we're going to go ahead and get in here. Today, we have joining our You Are a Jewel family. This is Susie Arnold Davis. Susie and I go way back. Way back. But in that time and that over 30-year time span, plus 30 plus actually, time span, we have grown into women and have gone through quite a bit in our lives, both positive and what could be deemed as educational moments. To put it lightly. We're just glad to have her here today. I know we've not been live for a little bit since the conference. Actually, I want to thank you all who joined us at the conference in person on the Gulf Coast back in February. But we are back at it, and we know that we like to let ordinary women tell their stories, and she has a phenomenal story to tell today. So again, thank you for joining us today, Susie, and at this time I'm going to let her take it away.
Well, good afternoon, friends. And I love to say friends because if you've met me once, you will definitely become a friend of mine because I love wrapping my mind and my heart and my love for God around others and sharing that. As Tracy said, we've known each other since we were little girls. We grew up together, went to school together, and we've now become women together and just sharing each other's stories and whatnot. I love what she's doing here. So I just want to edify her on that for a moment because it takes a lot to put it out there and and just showcase this and giving people, women, a space where they can become more. And it's stories that really help you connect and remember that you are not alone. And we're never alone because God is always with us, but sometimes it feels like we are walking solo. But what we don't realize is that we're often walking with others and we get to be an example for that. So I am actually going to take this back a few years. I have been over probably the last 3 for sure years have been some of the toughest years of my life. And when we talk about surviving to striving, I would still say that I'm in survival mode, but striving through that. A mentor of mine a couple of years back on a big stage and a platform of a leadership conference said, adversity is not exclusive to anyone. What becomes exclusively yours is how you persevere through that adversity. So I want to start off by saying that first, because we can all have a walk. And I feel like in a time like today, where it's easy to compare and we often want a pity party or we want people to feel sorry for us and other things like that, that sometimes what ends up needing to happen is really for us to realize that I could have this so much worse, and not sitting there and trying to compare ourselves, because comparison is the thief to joy anyways. So if we did that, then we would be sitting here robbing ourselves of the joy that which I have an acronym for that too, and that's Jesus, others, and then yourself. And so when we think about some of those things, like you've got to put certain things in a process, and I'm going to start right there, is that from everything that I'm about to share with you, it really comes from a space of where my heart is and where my mind is connected with my faith. And so prior to my journey starting, this phrase was all over my house. It says faith over fear. You're going to hear a little bit about that here more in a second. And that sign really kind of paints a big picture of who I am and where I've been going. Several years ago, I had a leader that had a lot of us pick our word for the year. And for about 3 years straight, my word was faith. And I sat on that one, not that I didn't have faith, but I think sometimes we're called to gather and grow our faith in different ways. And so I sat on that word for 3 years straight. And just as an FYI, the Lord always speaks to me in threes. It's kind of weird, really weird how he speaks to me. But if you take that 3, I didn't choose that. Ever since then, I've had different words. My word for this year is manifest. And that's also part of where we're going in the striving and thriving space. And so faith has just been a big piece of my heart. Going to church, sending my kids to private school that is Christian Catholic based for me, and moving in that direction. But I found myself 3.5 years ago on the verge of asking my now deceased husband, that's a story, for a divorce. And I had to lean heavily on God. A lot of people couldn't believe that after 16 years of marriage, I was embarking on a journey that, as a mom, you don't choose to get married and be divorced and have children. And I don't think that's anybody's intention when you enter marriage to become divorced. I married Warren with the notion that I knew that I was going to lose him to the D word death and not the D word divorce. And so truthfully, that was a big journey for me, a big struggle in my faith, in my walk, the guilt, everything about what was I going to do, because I was already ready to lose him, but to death, not to divorce. And so when that happened, it really required me to take my lessons with my words that I had created. My word that year was intentional. It was very mapped out. And the irony is it intentionally led me down this path for the rest of that year, walking into Q4 in October of 2021, knowing that I was going to have to make some big moves that went against everything that I kind of stood for. I had to break up my family because what was happening within my 4 walls is that it was no longer good, in the sense that my children were starting to treat me the way their father was treating me. And I knew that as an intentional mother, that also meant that if I wanted to raise good men, like I have been saying my whole life as a mom, not good boys, that it depended on what I did and how I viewed myself and how I allowed others to treat me, so that I could walk strong and tall as a woman of faith, and also walk as their guidance of how they were going to walk into the world and start treating the future women and their lives. And I say women because I have 2 sons. Hopefully there's only one woman. But, with that being said, it really started there. And to make that line in the sand really required me to lean heavily on the Lord. And I literally sought out every ounce of guidance he gave me. So fast forward, the following year, we got divorced. That was in 2022. And then in 2023, in 2023, I started the year with round 2 of skin cancer. And I had to go through that. Tracy almost forgot about that part. It's easy to forget about that after I've experienced what I'm going to share with you guys in a minute. And it was a pretty deliberate, it was a big scar from here to here on my head, where they had to do a surgery to pull out all my cancer cells, because I had already done a radiation, a chemo treatment on that in the past. So here we are. in 2023. I had just walked through that, ready to lock and load, happy to move forward. I was in this self-care mode, finally got insurance in my life with my job. And it was really, there was a list of things that I knew as a woman that I needed to make sure. Somebody who's always been proactive, helping others lose weight, putting their health and wellness first, getting in a health and wellness business to be proactive for my family, especially since I started having kids in my 30s instead of younger. I knew to be here, pushing 50 right now, and my kids are still in high school, that I was going to have to take better care of myself. So proactiveness has always been a part of that physical wellness, being proactive about that. You're in the driver's seat when you're proactive versus being reactive on the backside. So I went for some checkups, but I had this knot that was coming out of the side of my head, and I knew something was not right. I knew it. I felt it. It had been something that, due to circumstances in my life, my marriage, finances, I kind of put something on the back burner. And I'm very shameful of this, but I'm proud of speaking it because I know there's a lot of people out there that do this on a day-to-day basis. And finances is usually the number one thing. And then the second word here is fear. Okay. So as I walked into this meeting, I was working for a group of doctors at that time who happened to be radiologists. And what I needed to go get done was a lot of scans on my head. And so come to find out that day on June 23rd of 2023, or maybe it was 26, I found out that I had a very rare bone brain tumor that was so big that they were fearful that there was a lot more going on. So that led me to going to CTs. That led me to in a 90-day time period. You know what that is? 3 months. In 90 days, I bunkered down, did all the research, found the hospital that I needed to go to, did some local things, and I ended up going to Houston and having surgery. So on September 29th of 2023, I embarked on a 15-hour surgery. And it really rocked my world. But to know me in true fashion, and because I have 2 teenage boys who were fearful of losing their mother, they have been around the C word, cancer, their entire lives. Their father had battled several things of cancer, went into remission. So I walked in, again, that marriage, knowing to lose to death, but we overcame and went through that, and they were fearful. So I found ways. You remember her, Tracy? I found ways to make my story a little bit less hard and a little bit cuter and easier to deal with. And this is, I dubbed everybody that was in my inner circle my unicorn, posse, or tribe. And because in all the rarities, unicorns are rare, right? And in the scheme of things, I'm a redhead, that's less than 1%. My eyes are green blue, that's less than 1%. I had a less than 1% rare tumor. I had all these things going on in my life that statistically doctors and science was saying less than 1%. This unicorn became me. So my girlfriend, one of my best friends, gave me 2 names because I charged her to find the name out, to give me a name for this little gal right here. And it came down to hope and faith. Guess which one I chose? Faith. So this is Faith. This is Faith. And she's my little unicorn. She sits in my room, and I have a lot of unicorns now. But I want you guys to focus on this. When I got her, I didn't see all this. When I bought her on Amazon, I saw this face right here. But when I turned her around and pulled her out of the box, I saw all of this. And to me, that represented the rainbow, the promise that God gives us when we have the storm, that he will always provide us with a rainbow. So right now, charging into my journey, back in June of 2023, faith was my reminder that I had my rainbow coming to me eventually. So I hold on to her. Praise Jesus. So I'm trying not to get emotional with this because I'm staring at Tracy. And we've been through a lot together. But so that is how I walked through it, with faith, with my personal faith, with my family, with my friends, a lot of prayer. I made it very public, which was very hard for me to do, but I didn't do it for me. I did it for my kids. I did it to show my kids, because we had lived in this revolving our entire lives around their dad's health. And when I was getting divorced, I was upset with myself because I felt like I failed showing my kids what positivity looks like, because we had lived such a dark life. And one of the things that I was able to do, that you got to be careful what you ask God for, because God gives us what we ask for. You just don't know what's going to happen and what form it's going to happen in. And the form is he gave me my first opportunity to show my kids what positivity was. And I knew that's why I needed her. And that's why I needed this. And that's why I needed a smile. And I needed to share it, because I needed my kids to know that despite how hard it was going to get, whether I was going to live or not, that I was going to do it with positivity, and I was going to leave a legacy regardless of what happened. So that's kind of how that journey started. 15 hours later, I wake up from surgery. And if you knew me ahead of time, my hair was like always been long, red hair. And I woke up and I was bald. That was a question that I had asked my doctors if they were going to cut my hair. It wasn't for me. It was actually for my kids, because we had shaved their dad's head in time and past for similar treatments on his head. And I knew that they needed some sort of reassurance of what to wake up to. What we didn't know, that is in the middle of my surgery, an hour into it, the doctors came out, had my dad sign another piece of paper that says, everything in your daughter's head is bigger. This is going to take longer. And this is so different and weird. We want to use every ounce of her tumors for research. So my pieces of my head are sitting in a lab in Houston, Texas, at Houston Methodist Hospital. As a redhead, you need more anesthesia. That's another known trait. It's a genetic mutation, and 3 times usually the amount of anesthesia that a normal person needs. And pain sensitivity and narcotic sensitivity is really big. High tolerance to pain, high sensitivity to narcotics. So I came out, aced through a 15-hour surgery, but nearly died of cardiac arrest. And my kids were the ones in the room, minors, 14 and 16. And they're the ones that had to call the doctors, because in ICU, only 2 people can be in there. And my kids were the ones calling the doctors. For a week, I did not know any of this happened. There were 10 doctors carting me out. And my family wouldn't talk about it. But the first thing my dad got me was a priest. And every single day I was in the hospital, I had a priest in there with me, giving me communion, praying over me, to the point where I could talk. 1 week prior to this, I lost my job prior to my surgery. So I had walked into this journey, no finances, single mom to 2 teenagers, walking into a journey that I had no idea. When we talk about release, I had to completely relinquish myself to God. Doors had slammed hard in my face. And I remember one time laying in bed, thinking about my former job and things that maybe I could have done for them while I was in a hospital bed for 22, 25 days, something like that. And I think the only thing that got me through it is my anxiety was like, I could feel it right here in my throat, was the fact that they just gave me pain medicine. And God was like, you need to rest. And he put me to sleep. And I woke up the next, session, whenever it was, because they come in all the time. And I knew that God had a new walk from me. In the hospital, a priest offered me a job in Houston. I literally cried. And it just like God works through. I didn't take that job because I can't move to Houston, but radiation treatments, everything else. I know you can't really see that, but that's me in the hospital bed with my mom. I ended up being on the cover. This is 6 weeks post surgery on the cover of a local magazine called Gulf Coast Woman here. And it says Susie Davis, Faith Over Fear. My neighbor is actually works for them, writes the story. And I got to tell a story about positivity, about praising God through this picture right here was, we just happened to do it. It was a cold, rainy day. This is not where we were supposed to do the shoot. God put me by the water. I started my journey walking into surgery on a beach in Florida. And this time I was standing on the other side of surgery on a beach in November on our Mississippi Gulf Coast. And I share that because, you can look at this and, a lot of people can't recognize me, but I spoke at a kid's school at BioView Elementary and last spring. And I was telling this story and I brought Faith with me and they couldn't remember this was me, but it's what kids said. They said, you look the same. At this time, I didn't feel I looked the same because I went from having long hair. My hair has defined me my whole life, whether I liked it or not, being a redhead. And for once, I no longer had red hair and I didn't have anything that had defined me physically, defined me. And what God was teaching me was how to define myself differently. But those kids said that my smile was exactly the same. Although they broke my jaw and that was hard to smile there, but my smile is the same. The irony is on the back of the magazine, it was a dentist smile was on the back of it. So the kids pointed that out to me. So fast forward on the 1 year anniversary of me stepping into my surgery, I found out that my ex-husband had a tumor in his head. And it was on the opposite side of his head on the 1 year anniversary. I was like, okay, Lord, what are you doing to me? What are you doing? Now, mind you, when I walked through this, my ex-husband was not in the walk with me. We weren't doing well in the co-parenting lane. Again, there goes to we were trying to heal. And I had a very present father in the past to now I was walking solo with my kids, that he didn't have them on the weekends. They were with me all the time. There was a part of it that they didn't want to. They wanted to stay within our house. We did a lot of changes within our house. We were just trying to move forward. And prior to my ex-husband, Warren, finding out about this, we had done a wellness check together. My 16-year-old son and I called the cops and did a wellness check because we knew something was not right. And this is, again, someone I went the proactive way and he kind of wasn't. So I don't know if he knows or not, if he had a tumor, but basically 90 days later, Warren passed of a tumor. Again, 3 months. And he had a glioblastoma, which is the most aggressive brain tumor you can have. And I found myself called to help him because even though we were not married anymore, I took a vow in sickness and health till death do us part. And I was in a relationship at that time. That relationship ended, and that's fine because I do feel that the Lord puts us in positions. People come in and out of our lives to help us get through a season or stay. And you just got to lean harder and listen. We don't always like what we hear or see, and we just got to walk with it. So if you were to think about like where we were, I was able in the last couple, he lived in a hospital. He never made it back to Mississippi. We had to drive back and forth to Mobile. and he stayed at USA Hospital. Ironically, one of the doctors that I had met with for my head was one of the surgical team members for Warren. I was already familiar with what USA Health had to offer. And if I were to have emergent surgery, which I didn't have emergent surgery, I would have went there. But if I was going to select where I would heal myself, I went to the best. And that was Houston Methodist. And so through this walk, it was tough because he was not in a space of forgiveness. He didn't want me anywhere near him. The kids really struggled. When you think about having to tell your children who have lived with the thought that their dad may die and tell them that it is really going to happen, that is not easy words for a mother to do, especially when they just literally watched me almost die the year before. So when we walked through this whole journey, what I got for the first time was closure. Even though he could not speak anymore by the time we got there, I knew that I had a job as a woman of God and as still being tied to him, soul tie, right? As a spouse, even though we were legally divorced, I had a job to do. And that was to make sure that that man, the father of my children, got to heaven. And my kids knew what my job was. And they're like, Mom, we got to get dad to heaven, because he had some forgiving to do to others and to himself, most importantly. So I walked those months with him. The last 2 weeks, we got to spend it as a family. I did and still love Warren. I chose to make that man the father of my children. So I knew that in order to walk through this, I was going to have to put on a different face and put my anger aside, because there was a lot to be angry about, and focus on healing, focus on breaking those general curses, focusing on breaking those generational cycles so that I can see my kids walk through life knowing what forgiveness looks like. Because a lot of times we hold on to things longer than we should, and it deprives us of what we become in our future. And we wonder why. When we ask those questions, I learned not to ever ask why God does something to me. Because, a lot of the times it's simple. You haven't learned from what you needed to learn from, and God's going to just keep on throwing at it to you. But Job is my favorite book in the Bible. I've read it way more than I probably should. And my earthly father, my dad, is the one who put it in my hands in 5th grade when I was 10 years old. What parent makes you read Job? I don't know. But when my divorce was happening, I thanked my dad. And I said it in these exact terms. I said, it's crazy how you, like I said, our father put you in charge of giving me my tool of life, Job, the book of Job, because he already knew what my walk was going to be. God knows. He already made us exactly who he wanted us to. And he knew that I was going to need that book to remind me of everything, because he never killed him. He just tested him, and he kept on going and going. And the one thing he told Satan, you can do anything to him, you just cannot kill him. This is my most prized servant. He loves me. And you know what I love? God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, all of it. So I knew that as long as I lived like Jobette, if I could live like Job and be reminded that despite all that happens, that if I can walk like Job, that God will give me my rainbow. And the joke was, because I have to turn everything into a joke to get through it, is that I didn't only just need one rainbow. I needed about 3 of them now, that I'm going to sit here and wait for my rainbows, not just singular. They're going to be plural because I know the Lord has a lot in store for me. And that's really where my word manifest comes from, is that there's that in store. So through this process, I got closure. I got to give him last words. I got to heal him and his brother. They hadn't spoken since their dad's funeral, which was a couple years prior to. My kids he got to heal with my family, my parents, and we were all there together. I brought in his best friends. I brought in all my priests. There was prayer every day. And at his funeral, we had 5 priests at his funeral. I did a wedding that day because I'm a wedding planner. Yeah, I had a funeral for my ex-husband and then had a wedding that night just at the church. And we had more priests present at his. All I've heard is how beautiful the scriptures that I chose, how my kids spoke, how we were united as a family, and what I gave to him. Because at the end of the day, it didn't matter what had happened. I told him I forgave him, even though I knew the truth. And I needed him to forgive himself, because you cannot get through those gates if you can't forgive yourself. It's not just about forgiving others. That's what God's there for. We have got to be right when we're talking to him. So that last week of his life was praying over him with these, I'm Catholic, this rosary wrapped around his hands, wanting to pray with me. In a time where our whole marriage, we prayed, but we never prayed over each other. And I got that in those last moments. And I told him to forgive himself. In that season, my sister-in-law posted something on social media that told the most beautiful story. And it was a silhouette of darkness and a silhouette of fire. And it was looked like 2 people, and they were embracing each other. And it went it was about anger. Okay. So think about the red fire being the anger, right? And the darkness being the other word. And here's the cycle of love and life. Anger is grief. And so what you see was this fire and this grief. I was grieving my marriage. I was grieving what I no longer had, or what I thought I had. And anger is what comes out of us when we don't know how to cope or deal with something. But through that cycle is the next word. Anger is grief, and grief is love, and love is God. So if there's something that I can have you, when we talk about surviving and striving, if we can think about where we are in our lives today, or in circumstances where we were really struggling, and if we can take it and determine, are we in an anger spot or are we in a grieving spot? Because those are very familiar and similar feelings. How are we going to take it from that and focus on the love? Because 2 people don't get married because they don't love each other. And so that is probably the biggest thing that I want you guys to focus on, is those 4 words: anger, grief, love, God. And here we are. It's been 6 months since Warren has passed. There's been a lot that's happened. Some things that I can't even talk about, because I'm still trying to learn how to deal with them. But through this, what I know is that God gave me those 2 circumstances to show my kids what I thought I was never going to be able to show them. And that is showing what adversity looks with a face of positivity versus anger, the difference between their dad and I, and how to walk through the next chapter. So when we talk about lack of coincidences, my 15-year-old, we sat at our kitchen table like we are right now. And he goes, Mom, there is no coincidence for anything that has happened. There's no coincidence that 3 years later, I'm standing here telling you this story, 3.5 years later, that the Lord broke us apart 3 years prior to this so that I could learn my own strength. Because if Warren would have passed then, I would not have known after 18 years of marriage how to survive with those 2 teenage boys without him. 3 years ago, I wouldn't have known my own self-worth. 3 years ago, I wouldn't have known my own strength. 2 years ago, not even a year and a half ago, the Lord broke me completely. Head, everything. So my head is cut open from here all the way to here. I've got a scar this long on my leg. I am my own donor. My jaw's been broken. I have 400 stitches in my brain. I have plastic instead of a skull in my head. If we were to not have hair, you would see scars all over me, but you can't see them right now unless I tell you. Because you know what? It's what's here and what comes out of here that defines who we are. It's not all this extra stuff. But I couldn't see that here. I couldn't see it. But I've gotten to tell my story through all of that. But more importantly, I had to be completely broken. And it's like that ancient Japanese story about the teacup being put back together and filled in with gold in the middle. And goodness gracious, a metal that is prized, right? Even back in biblical times. God broke me and he put me back together exactly, meticulously, exactly the way he wanted me to be today. So yes, I've been through hell and back, but every step of the way, God made me be. I had to go through all of that so that my kids had the strength of losing their mother. They'll tell you that losing their dad to death was easier than watching me go through what I went through. And I asked my youngest, I said, wow, I couldn't understand it. And they're like, Mom, we thought you were going to die. And they almost watched it. They watched it. So again, God gives you the most humbling moments in your life when you perspective from different point of views and how that works. So we went through all that. They told me that they were going to be fine. And I have dealt with this harder than they have dealt with it because I see what they don't see, right? We have vision as adults, kids do not. And the vision is that I can see and feel every ounce of them not having their dad for milestones like prom or making his confirmation or future getting married or graduating college, that 2 boys don't deserve this. But God knew that they were strong enough and that I knew that through the journey that Warren's gift to me was those 2 boys. That my family was complete. 3 of us. And that I was no longer looking back. I was looking forward. Water, forward, right? And that's what God wanted. I was always intended. I was meant to be a family of 3. And that he pulled us apart for 3 years so that we could learn how to live without Warren while he was on earth so that we could move forward when he wasn't here and we could praise where he was now. And I reminded him that I needed to make sure he got there and he forgave himself so that we could be reunited. So the day he died, I had a scheduled shoot. I'm a host of a TV show on our local NBC affiliate, and it is called Living Local with Susie Davis. But we were doing the test shoot on September 24th. My brother-in-law asked me if I wanted to stay the night before, and he was in that death rattle. And I said, no, I'm going to go home. The boys need me. Warren will not pass if I'm here. I already knew that. I had done everything I needed to do. And I said, we're not coming in the morning like we had been. I said, we're going to wait until I'm done with my test shoot and then we'll go. And he's like, Susie, I just don't know if this is the right thing for you to do. And I said, Alan, it is the right thing for me to do because it's either I'm going to kill it and be Susie or I'm not. And then I have the best reason for why I couldn't. I said, but you can't hold me back. I know you love me and I know you're trying to protect me, but let me go do me because this is what God designed me for. I was leaving and driving and I decided to take a moment driving and selfie a picture. And once I got there at that state, at the place where I was doing, afterwards, I found out that Warren had died when my thing started. My brother-in-law came over to the house. My parents, everybody was here. And when I looked back at that picture, in the reflection of my glasses was a cross. So I can tell this story day in and day out because the beauty is that we never know when our moment is coming.
No.
We never know what's going to happen. And the important thing is to take the time to appreciate the moments. The heart, praise Him big in those moments because survival is with God so that you can strive. And now my goal is to continue to share this message with others so that they know that they're not alone and that I can do all things through Christ who
Who
strengthens me.
strengthens me? Oh my goodness. Oh, Susie, I followed, your story, it's just to hear you say it though. I'm waiting for the book, ma'am.
I know I've been asked so many times, like Susie, when are you
Yeah,
writing a
I
book?
think you need to do that. My a family member of mine lost her mother a number of years ago, and she wrote a book on grief called "Grief Sucks." And
That's
that
a good
was
title.
and that was the side of it where she just kind of told the story of the anguish and the sadness. And now she's at the point, and I was just listening to you, it was making me think about her, in the sense that it's one word that you did not mention, but I know that it's embedded in everything that you said, and it was trust.
Oh, absolutely.
Trust. All of those things, trust in God, trust in that He's going to take care of you in all of those, even in your fear, even in anguish, that love and trust, it shone through so brightly. And I know that your story, we've had a lot of people come on and tell, their stories, but when I say that surviving and striving, you're doing it simultaneously.
Yeah,
And
there is not, I am it's still a work in progress right now.
I hear it. The passion is there. So a lot of times people get on and they talk about, how strong they are, and they've overcome, and you have overcome some things, but you also still show the vulnerability that's still there. And for real people, for real women, just ordinary women, they need to understand that everyone goes through things differently. It may not be cancer, or sickness. It may not be the fear of your children losing their parents. It may not be divorce. It may not be losing a spouse, because even though, you all were divorced, you're not remarried. So,
No, I am like there's no such thing as a divorced widow, but I am in the eyes of God, I am a widow. The
yes,
ladies at church remind
absolutely.
me that.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. And so, with all of that being said, I'm waiting for the book, ma'am. And after our viewers and listeners, and we do these lives, and they go far beyond, just the day of the live. And so I know that all of our replay viewers, some people will listen to it over and over again. I know that I'm going to, I've not experienced, other than divorce, but I've experienced other things that I could connect to what you're saying, today. And it's just been I don't know. I'm over here on mute, and you can see my mouth moving. I just wanted to make sure there was no noise in the back. But this has just been phenomenal. I thank you for coming on.
Yes.
I thank you. I remember when you were in the hospital, and you were very vulnerable. Then I was like, I don't know. She's so brave. I don't know if I could really do that. But you know what?
One of our
Yeah.
classmates came and saw me at the hospital, if you
and,
remember.
and that's what I so with God all things are possible, and that's just kind of shown through today as well. I just thank you again for being coming on and sharing with the You Are a Jewel family. We look forward to seeing you even more, even though it's taken us so long to get this together.
I'm
I just
here. I'm here. Well, there's just been a lot going on. I think now it makes a
I
lot of
think
sense.
yes, it has been. So just to kind of do a wrap up, is there anything that you would like to kind of close out with? Because you've dropped so many nuggets today, for individuals. But is there any, one last sentence or last statement or anything that you'd like to say to our viewers today before we close out today?
I would say build your circle. Build yourself a strong circle, because there's that saying that no one fights cancer alone. It takes a village to raise a family. Those we've all heard. We all need our tribe. And it is important, especially as we grow in age and maturity, that comes with wisdom, but we need to lean on others that can give us those. And don't be afraid to be bold with your faith. And just remember to praise God more so in the darkness. It's easy to praise God when things are good, but He loves us even more and wants to nurture. He is ready to gift us, but we have got to praise Him even when it's the toughest of times. And just remember to share your story, because stories are what make people remind themselves that they are not alone.
Absolutely. And that's what this is all about, reminding individuals that they are not alone. You are not alone, ladies. You are not alone. And I thank you again, Susie, for today. You all, just one one announcement. We do have the applications out for the Agnes James Memorial Fund. And that is for high school seniors. It's a $500 scholarship. If you're interested in that application and it did not get to your high school, I think I sent it across the coastal counties. And we also have here in the Delta, where I live, we have what's called the Lionel James Memorial Scholarship, and it's a technical scholarship. So if you are interested in those applications and your child did not receive it, and both of them are $500 each, the application deadline is coming soon. It actually is on the 15th, but if you request it, then we can do an extend a few days. We have gotten quite a few applications in, but I just want to make sure that those deserving seniors are able to at least apply for the scholarship. So you can message me via the Facebook page, via the Instagram page, or you can email me. YouAreJewel.com is the website. And so we can get those applications out to you all, and just let us know, or to your students, to your young people that you may know. But that's what's happening right now. We are in the process of getting ready for our Ordinary Women Doing Extraordinary Things 2026. And so you'll be hearing more about that as time goes on. And just be looking for us out and about. If you see someone that has a shirt that says You Are a Jewel, I'll just say, hey, are you a part of that group? And so we're trying to expand our place in the community, knowing that we are across the southern region as it relates to Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia, is where we have stepping stones in what we're trying to do here. But we're just trying to help just ordinary women reach a level of self-actualization. And with your help, we can do that. So, Susie, thank you again for being here
You.
today. Thank you for being my guest, and we hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a blessed day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.